egregious of them take advantage of hardworking Americans in the process. And Steve Bannon stands out as a perfect example of this blatant inequality. He gained power and influence as a top advisor to the former president. And he used that influence and those connections to cheat everyday Americans and carry out this fraud. You see, Bannon was the architect of Trump's plan to build a wall between the United States and Mexico. So when Mr. Bannon created a fundraising scheme to finance the construction of that wall, he basically stole millions of dollars to line his own pocket and those of other politically connected people. And today, he and We Build the Wall are being charged for defrauding these donors out of more than $15 million and for laundering the proceeds to further advance and to conceal the fraud. Between January and December of 2019, Mr. Bannon and others publicly represented that all of the money donated to We Build the Wall would be directed towards the organization's efforts to build a wall. Mr. Bannon and others repeatedly claimed that the president of the organization would not receive a single penny from this fundraising effort. But this was nothing more than a ploy to garner media attention and to rob innocent, hardworking Americans out of their money. Text messages exchanged between Mr. Bannon and a high-level We the Wall affiliate stated that if the president of the organization were to promise that he would not take a salary, that it would be, quote, the most talked about media narrative ever, unquote. But in reality, We Build the Wall paid its president more than $200,000 in 2019. And then the organization tried to hide those payments by laundering them through third-party entities, including one controlled by Mr. Bannon. In more text messages, Mr. Bannon outlined who would pay those salaries and stated that there would be, quote, no deals I don't approve, unquote. Simply put, Mr. Bannon lied to ordinary citizens about this project. He diverted their hard-earned money. He preyed upon the emotions of New Yorkers and Americans. And then when Mr. Bannon was held accountable for his criminal actions, the former president pardoned him. Given this reality, it is understandable how hard-working, honest, ordinary citizens are cynical about the two systems of justice in our country. One for the rich and powerful, and another for everyone else. But in New York, we have zero tolerance for corruption and or for abuses of power. We represent the people, and we are determined to hold accountable those who transgress against them. And there cannot be one set of rules for everyday Americans and another set of rules for the wealthy and the powerful. We all must play by the same rules, and everyone must obey the law. Again, I thank the District Attorney, Mr. Bragg, for his close partnership, his wonderful team, and I just really want to commend him and his dedicated team, and as well as those in my office for the work that they have done in getting justice today for Americans and in particular for New Yorkers.
So I think many of you may know this, but the arraignment, just as a matter of kind of housekeeping and logistics, the arraignment in this matter we anticipate will be this afternoon in room 1530 at 100 Center Street. That may not be news to some, but maybe someone wanted that information, so I wanted to provide it. We now have some time for some on-topic questions. I'm going to.
Which of course is the subject of the federal indictment. Is there a legal reason for not doing that?
So and I think your question touches upon it. We have two different jurisdictions, obviously, and two sets of statutes. It's charged federally under the wire fraud statute. Here, scheme to defraud and money laundering. I don't want to go too far beyond the indictment. Just the contours of the scheme to defraud. In that statute and the conduct it encompasses laid out in the indictment, but I think the sort of focal point of your question hits upon it, which is just that we're operating under two separate jurisdictions and two separate statutes.
Was there a possibility of charging him like a grand larceny?
I'm not going to sort of get into what could have been charged. The charges, and we think the scheme to defraud charge, which it's set forth in the indictment, it encompasses the conduct which we believe is the focus of this matter, and we believe should be the focus of this matter. But what you just mentioned is certainly a part of this matter.
And you've been listening to New York State Attorney General Letitia James and Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg discussing the new state charges filed against former Trump advisor Steve Bannon.
That's right. These are similar to the federal charges filed earlier, but were pardoned by former President Trump.
So joining us now for more on this is CBS News legal contributor Keir Dougal. Keir, great to see you. So, Steve Bannon has been charged with money laundering, conspiracy, and fraud. What legal consequences could he be facing? And are his lawyers arguing that this could be a case of double jeopardy?
Yeah, so the consequences are potentially severe if he's convicted. He's looking at years of time in prison. Certainly there are questions right now, or there have been questions right now about double jeopardy issues because of an old particularity of New York state law. But I don't believe there are going to be effective or valid double jeopardy arguments that Bannon can employ here. I think he's in the soup.
And what's interesting is Steve Bannon's arraignment is happening later today. What do you expect his plea will be? And why? There is, a presidential pardon doesn't cover state crimes. So what do you expect his next move here to be?
Yeah, well, he's going to plead not guilty for sure. I would be shocked if, given the statements that he made today, or made at least in the last 24 hours, disparaging the case, invoking the witch hunt mantra, I would be shocked if he did anything other than what most defendants do, which is to plead not guilty. And then, the case will grind on through discovery and perhaps motion practice, and then there will be a trial in front of a jury, I would expect, which is sort of what we're going to be watching for.
And so, Keir, having, looked over what we know now, do you feel like the state's case against him then is pretty strong?
Yeah, so, I've taken a pass of the indictment. It is detailed. One of the things that I think they facilitate by charging both money laundering the way they do and the scheme to defraud the way they do is they're able to tell a relatively complete story and give the public at this stage a good picture of the evidence with detailed text messages, laying out the scheme, laying out the dates, who did what when. That is not the way prosecutors always have to proceed. They can simply state a simple charge, but here we have a speaking indictment, which I think does two things. It informs us, but it also will facilitate their ability to get the full story that they want to tell in front of this jury in the courtroom.
Mm. Yeah, interesting stuff. So Keir, you mentioned this earlier, but what steps can you expect both prosecutors and Steve Bannon to take following today's arraignment?
Yeah, so, there'll be questions about bail. There'll be some questions about discovery. I hope that the judge takes some control over the statements that the lawyers will be making in the case. I'm sure that the prosecutors will be speaking only in court, but there's a risk when a defendant or his lawyers are out in front of a microphone of tainting a jury. And so, when we have comments like, this is phony, this is a witch hunt, it has the ability to skew the jury. And the thing that's really important to remember is when you make claims like the charges are phony and this is a government, persecuting me, you have to remember that for over 200 years we have trials by jury of your peers that are picked for their neutrality, picked for their independence. If you have bias, you're removed. And that's what distinguishes us as a country from places like North Korea or Russia. Here, the government can't just say you're guilty and then put you in jail. They have to prove it by a very high standard to a jury. So, this set of arguments from Bannon that it's phony, I hope the judge takes control of this, because honestly, I think he's blowing smoke, and I don't think it's helpful.
And as Tanya had said earlier, you can simply follow the money as prosecutors do in cases like this, and say you claimed one thing and the money went elsewhere. So we'll see what a jury may think of that. Keir Dugal, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, and we're going to take a very short break. We've got much more news ahead for you, including the latest on Queen Elizabeth II's deteriorating health. You're streaming CBS News, always on.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
This place is at the very tip of the spear when it comes to Satanism and witchcraft and demonism.
Has the church been this divided?
Not in my lifetime. They've been radicalized in their approach to politics.
United in Christ, divided by politics.
We have what I call a cowardly pastor problem, because they don't want to get involved in the political situation.
Conservative Christianity and Republicanism have grasped hands in a way that's very unhealthy.
There are churches whose members have divided over partisan politics.
How an evangelical civil war could change the spirit of America.
This was a heavily Christian-influenced attack.
When we have the ability to say that God is on our side, it allows us to justify all kinds of cruelty.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging wind.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared. People from every